to find out what you have taught first, then to map it to your goals, your learning outcomes, and finally, when you are finding out the learning outcomes, you want to assess them, that is, evaluate them. So, when I talk about evaluating them, I have to remember a lot of things that goes through in this evaluation. So, as a teacher, when I enter into the class, it's very easy that we go and say, okay, today I'm conducting a test, or today I'm going to teach this, or today my topic for the day is XYZ. But how did this XYZ come into the picture? How did this topic for that day come into the picture is something that we have to understand. So there is a process, there is a line or chain of reaction that goes through, the chain of steps that goes through this entire evaluation, and that chain we are going to see today. We all know how we plan our year. We all know how we plan our the entire subject. Now we will just go back and see once again in detail how we are doing the entire plan. Okay, so when we are beginning, I want to ask you, I just want to dwell on this point. What is the difference between a curriculum and a syllabus? What's the difference between a curriculum and a syllabus? Anybody can answer. Difference between a curriculum and a syllabus. Yes. You can even write, you can even chat. What is the difference between a curriculum and a syllabus? Yeah. Curriculum is a board. Because you know the video, my image is coming the inverted. I can't really. But if you could just say, then it would become easy for me.
Syllabus.
Yes.
Syllabus is I think it is a summary of the topic.
Yes.
And it curriculum is the content.
Okay, so we'll go in a little bit of detail in understanding this word curriculum and syllabus, which we very interchangeably use at many places. Okay, now curriculum is something that encompasses all the subjects, all the curricular and the co-curricular and the extracurricular activities that a child will have for a period of 1 year. So suppose if I'm going to the class of grade 5. So in grade 5, the child has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 subjects. In those subjects, he may have a project, he may have a field trip, he may have an annual day, he may have sports, he may have this. All that comes as a part of the curriculum. So when we say a curriculum will always focus on the all-round development of the child. That is, we call it as ARD, all-round development, which means that we are trying to develop the child in our class physical development, intellectual development, moral development, social development, cultural development, spiritual development, ethical development, and so on. So all kinds of development that will happen for a child in that period, in a span of a year, would be the curriculum. In broader, it could be the curriculum for the entire span of time that the child remains in the school. Whereas when we go to syllabus is the subject that you take. Suppose if I am a history teacher, I go to grade 6 and I teach history there. For history, the chapters that I have in my subject, those chapters are called as the content for the syllabus. So syllabus is basically the chapters, the content that you have, which you are going to deliver in the class. So you have to understand, when we use this word curriculum, it will involve all the experiences that the child will get throughout the year, whereas in syllabus it focuses very narrow, it goes down to the subject specific. Fine. Now, this subject specific syllabus will be used in the classroom with the help of a resource. That resource is called as a, we can use that as one of the resources is our textbook. So our textbook has a lot of chapters, and these chapters will encompass our syllabus. Okay, fine. Now, when we start our academic year, we are all ready to start. So we have one thing in our mind, that is the objective. And what is that objective? We will coin it as goal. GOAL. I will come back to this word goal in each of the steps that we are doing. But let me just write this word goal and tell you what this word goal means. So if you read goal, G stands for getting ready with. Okay. O stands for unit and our year and unit plan. Assessment based on the learning outcomes. Now, we will learn this whole thing today of goal in the aspect of evaluation, with keeping in mind that we have an evaluation to check. Okay, so this is our goal that we have and we are going to do today. So when we are getting ready to the school, okay, we have our syllabus, we have our textbook in our hand, and few times we see that the chapters in the textbook are either given in maybe 4 chapters as one unit, or it could be from 1 to 15 all the chapters, or it could be 4 chapters consisting of different units. So it could be unit 1 has 4 chapters, unit 2 has the, I gave you two. So I gave you an example where Ram says, I will learn riding a bicycle, whereas Sham says, I am learning to ride a bicycle. Now, among both these statements, tell me which is the statement that tells you about a is goal specific. Which among them is goal specific? Ram saying that I will learn to ride a bicycle. Sham saying that I am learning to ride a bicycle. Which is a goal specific statement?
Second one.
Second one. Why? Because the first one,
confident.
Yeah.
Confident.
Yeah. The second one, it shows that a person is learning, whereas the first one, it shows that the person will do it, but when it is going to happen, we are not sure. So there is an action that is happening in the second statement. Likewise, everything that we plan also has a series of actions that is related. So here, when we go about with it, we will now see, most of us have learned about the water cycle. We all know the water cycle. Yes. So now what happens in the water cycle? I'm just going to rub a little bit of this. So tell me, what does this first picture indicate? What does it indicate?
Sun.
Sun. This
Sunrise.
could be rain. Yes. This cloud, and it is water stream. Okay, river. So now when we are learning water cycle, we know all these four things that are associated to the water cycle. Now what happens in a water cycle? How do we teach? We say that the sun falls on the water, okay, it dries up, and then it evaporates, goes as clouds, and again it falls as rain. These are few things that we are teaching them. One. So when we are teaching them, we are asking them question: what is sun, what is rain, what is clouds, which they are already aware of. They know about it. So they know these things. That is in their knowledge. They are aware of it. You have not taught them new. What did you teach them new? You taught them the process of the water cycle, the way the water cycle is happening. You taught them that. So one is they had some knowledge. What was the knowledge about the various things? Sun, the rain, the stream, and the clouds. They were aware of it. Then from there you took them to the process of the water cycle. And after you finish the process of the water cycle, now you are telling them, do one small experiment. Keep a bowl of water in the sun for 2 days. And after 2 days, look at the bowl and the water. So they will say that, okay, the water has reduced, or they will say the water has evaporated. They will say the water is become less. These are certain things that they are going to tell you. So now the learning of the process of the water cycle, that is, and they have understood that learning and put in the real life experience. So when they did that, that is called as an application that they have done. And finally, when you ask this entire water cycle in the exam for a drawing, that time it becomes the drawing that they have created, that is the skill. So 4 aspects that you have to understand when you are teaching for a learning outcome and for evaluation is: one is your knowledge. What knowledge are you going to give them? The knowledge involves their previous knowledge, what they are already aware of. Then the second aspect is the understanding. What additional understanding have you taught them? What did you teach them through that entire process? What did you teach them in your classroom activity? Third is, how are they going to use this in their daily life? That is application. Finally, we are teaching this to apply in our day-to-day life. Fourth is the skill. How well are they able to perform that? So when you have the knowledge, understanding, application, and skill, that's when your learning outcome to be assessed or to be evaluated becomes complete. Okay, so here I will again give you 2 statements. One is learning of addition. So I will go back to Ram and Sham again. Ram learns addition in the class, while Sham is trying to have mastery in creative art. So Ram is learning addition in the class. Sham is trying to reach mastery in creative art. Tell me, which of the goal both of the goal can be assessed. Which of the goal can be assessed with a perfect time gap or a time span? Which can be assessed with a proper time span? Ram learning addition in class. Sham learning.
Ram learning addition in class.
Ram learning addition in class. Why? Because addition is something that you will be you keep on checking, and you'll find out whether Ram has learned or hasn't. Whereas the other case is Sham learning mastery. So mastery is something that you cannot be defined very well. What I feel is good may not be good for you. You may think, no, this can be better. So that means that will take a long process, and the time is not well framed. So hence, remember, whenever you are trying to assess something, there should be a proper time gap that has to be maintained. Now, we all have gone through our the January month of 2020, right? Yes. Now this is the calendar of Jan 2020. Now looking at the calendar, tell me how many working days do we have in this month? How many working days do we have in the month of Jan 2020? If you are a teacher, then you know which subject you teach. Based on that, tell me,
25.
write it in your book. You can
25.
25. Okay.
25.
Very good. Okay. Write it in your book somewhere. And you said 25 working days. Okay. Now, let us count.
41 minus.
First, most of the schools were having a holiday on first. So second, if it started, 1, 2, let us take Saturday as working. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9, 10, 11. Makar Sankrant was a holiday. 10, 11. So considering this as a holiday, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. You said 25. Is it correct? Okay. Now, considering that as a school, I have announced that in the as a school principal, I have announced that I'm going to have an annual day practice. So every day, I'm going to have practice in the period first, second, and third. Every day I'll have practice in the period first period, second period, and third period. If it is like that, then as a teacher, how many days will you be able to go to the class? It means that in this process, you will have to do your calculation, right? As a teacher, you will have to calculate now. How you will calculate? Based on the timetable. So when you are, why did I do this exercise? It is just to understand that every month has certain number of working days. In those working days also, we have certain number of days that we may not have a period in the class, which means that our full syllabus that we have, our full entire syllabus, we have to finish in a span of a period, in a span, in a time period. And that planning of your entire syllabus in various months is called as a year plan. I will tell you how it is generally done. Now, this is something that I want you to see. Okay? There are two parts to it. One is, which is written here, I will fold it like that. Probably you can see it better. Is it visible? Okay. Now, if you see, I have written how many working days do you have? Okay. How many working days do you have? You have
365.
Yeah. So how many working days do you have? So how do you calculate that? You will calculate that with the total. Is it coming the other way? 1 minute. Can you see it straight or it is coming the flip side? Is it straight? Okay. Okay. So how many working days do you have? So that will be calculated with the total number of days in a year, that is 365 minus 185 days. Now I'll tell you how did you get this 185 days that you minused. And so what are the number of days that you have to teach is only 180 days that you have to teach. You get to teach. And how did you get that? Is this. So these are our some kinds of holidays that are calculated. So one is your holiday is your summer break, which may be around 52 days that you may have a summer break. I have again written it as approximately. Approximately 52 days will be your summer break. Then the next will be Diwali, approximately 21 days. Then it would be Christmas, approximately 10 days. Then you have exams and tests again, which is 30 days. Then you have Sundays, that are 52 days, and you have other holidays, which is 20 days, which means when you count all that, you have 185 holidays or days that you are not able to take lessons in the school. So 365 minus your 185 is your 180 working days that you get in your school. And this 180 working days is divided in this form, wherein you will see the different standard and the subjects that you have. So different standards and subject, which standard has how many periods for a particular week. So if you see this, you will come to know that English has for 6th standard, 7th standard, 8th standard, 9th standard, and 10th standard. Approximately, they would have these number of periods in a week. So likewise, it goes for English, Hindi, Marathi, Science, Maths, History, Geography. So if you have this, it means that if you are a history teacher, then you are probably only having 4 periods in 1 week. So it may be 2 periods in a day, or one period in 4 days. Likewise, if you are an English teacher, you are having 8 periods. So in 6 days or 5 working days, you may have 1 day where you have double period, which means that now your entire planning for the year has to go on with this time frame and this number of periods. Apart from that, you have other periods such as craft, you have PT, you have library, you have value education, you have work experience and other periods. And hence, in a week, you may have somewhere between 45 to 48 periods in a week for a student. If this is the way that you have your understanding of your year plan, then you will be able to plan for your entire syllabus. So your entire syllabus, that is your entire content, you are going to divide in which month, how many working days you have, how many days lectures, how many days you will be able to go to the class to take a period, and based on that, you will divide the syllabus in the entire year. So if in the month of June, suppose if you are going to the class in the month of June and your school starts on June 14, then you have 15 days, but out of that, you have to check how many working days are there, how many periods are you getting as per the timetable per week. That will also tell you how many periods in a month, and then you will start dividing for that month. If you say that, no, I will finish 2 units or 2 chapters in this month of June, but you only have 4 periods, which means that your planning will go topsy-turvy in the beginning itself. So it means that you have to now take into account the total number of working days that you have, the total number of periods that you have in a week, and then plan your syllabus, your content for that entire month, for the entire week and entire month and the year. So this planning is called as a year plan. Okay, any questions that you have for a year plan? Any questions that you want me to elaborate on a year plan? Okay, so shall I move forward to the, now once the year plan is made, then comes the unit plan. Now what is a unit plan? A unit plan means it can be a combination of 2 or 3 or more chapters in one unit. One unit may consist of more than 2, 3 or 4 chapters. So when I say a unit plan So a unit plan may have chapter 1, 2, 3. This could be your unit. A unit which has chapter 1, 2, 3, or maybe at the most 4. So when a unit does not mean a small portion of the chapter, but a unit means one or two, more than one, that is 2 or 3 chapters in a unit. Now, why we are taking this? Because this is the way that your entire year plan is first divided. Like I told you, maybe your textbook divides your entire chapters into 4 units, or you may have 16 chapters together. You will divide it into 4 or 5 units, the way you want, the way you are planning your assessment. So this unit will have maybe 3 or 4. Now, what are the things that you are going to keep in mind when you are planning for a unit plan? Or how should your unit plan look like? First, why is a unit plan necessary? A unit plan tells you what you are going to teach. I'm going back to my WH questions. What am I going to teach? So in that, what am I going to teach? I'm going to teach chapter number 1. I'm going to teach chapter number 2. And I'm going to teach chapter number 3. In chapter number 1, I may have 2 or 3 or 4 subunits, small parts. In chapter number 2, also I may have many other subunits. In chapter number 3, also I may have many subunits. So I'm going to teach all that. So I'm going to teach these chapters in that unit. So what am I teaching? I'm teaching the content first. Second, why am I teaching? Back to my WH questions. Why am I teaching? I'm teaching so that the children are able to achieve doing something. That is, by the end of this lesson, the student in my class will be able to write an answer, explain the topic, differentiate, will be able to give an example, will be able to pick out the rhyming words. These are my learning outcomes. And for that, I am teaching this content to them. That is my second point. Third is, how am I going to teach? That is, which methodology I'm going to use them to teach. Am I going to take a discussion? Am I going to take a project? Am I giving a lecture? Am I taking them for a field trip? How am I going to teach is my third aspect. And fourth is, how am I going to do my test? What way will I test them to find out if my learning outcome is achieved? So, am I going to give them a question answer, written paper? Am I going to ask them, okay, you stand up and tell me the answer and I will grade them? Am I going to have a reading comprehension? Am I going to give them a quiz? Am I going to give them a project? Which is the way, which strategy am I going to use to assess my students in the learning outcome is my fourth part of the unit plan. So my unit plan has 4 parts. First is my content. What am I teaching? Second is, why am I teaching? That is the learning outcome. Third is, how am I teaching? What method I'm using to teach? And the next one is, how will I test them? What kind of test I'm using to teach? So I will go back again. I will show you how the unit plan looks like. So my unit plan will look like, one is, it will have the topic. So topic may be chapter 1. Then I will have the learning outcomes. Then I will have the method of teaching. And then I will have the assessment. So in chapter 1, I will have the A part, the B part, and the C part. So how am I, what I expect them to give me here, what they will do here, what they will do, how I will teach, and how I will assess. While doing this, it is not necessary that all my assessment should be in the form of a question paper or a pencil paper test. It can be in the form of a paper pencil test, or it can be in the form of a quiz, or it can be in the form of a drama, or it can be in the form of a field visit, or it can be in the form of a project. So here you have to understand, here when I'm testing them, you will think whether it is a written test, whether I'm going to ask them multiple choice questions in the test, whether I'm going to ask them fill in the blanks, am I going to ask them give reasons, am I going to ask them short answer, definition, give meaning, etc. So these are my ways of assessing them. I can also ask them to draw something, like the water cycle, draw a water cycle. That could also be a way to assess them. I can also ask them to enact something, to do a role play. That can also be a form of assessment. So whatever is your form of assessment is something that is important for our next part, that is called as unit plan teaching and testing. Now here we have to understand, why do we test, or what is the most important aspect of testing. Now tell me, what is the difference between teaching and testing? Do we test while we teach? Do we test while we teach?
We can ask ICQs.
Yes, you are. Yeah. So while you teach, also you are doing a testing process. Like in the class, I may ask a question. Okay, now you tell me, give me an answer for this. You tell me an answer for this. So you are testing also while you are teaching. But that testing is not enough for you to really assess your learning outcome. So for that, if you need to really assess your learning outcome, it means that your test should be more concrete. It should be more solid, which gives you an evidence. It should give you an evidence of your achievement of learning outcomes. Like I cannot go to the class and say that 75% of my students have understood this topic. How do I know that 75% understood? Only because they were nodding? No. How can I prove that? If my children have given I have given a test and 75% of them have passed, then I can say that yes, at least 75% have understood this topic. So it is very important that we do the testing. Now, while we are doing the testing, there are few aspects that we have to remember while we do a test. Now, tell me, what is a test? Or what can be a part of a test? What can be a part of the test? I just told some time back. What could be the different parts of a test? MCQ, fill in the blank.
Quiz,
Quiz.
fill in the blank, give reason.
Yes, very good. They all can be
meaning.
Yes. So they all can be a part of the test. Now, if they are all going to be a part of the test, tell me, if I am going to the class, like I'll give you an example. Suppose today morning session, I think there was a good example about about mutton biryani. I think so. Some biryani was there. Yeah. Okay. Now tell me, how will you test whether the mutton biryani is good? Because you learned about feedback, right? You learned more in the morning about feedback. Now tell me, the mutton biryani, how well, let's remove the mutton part. Let us go as biryani. Tell me how the biryani, how can you say that the biryani is good? How could you say that? By tasting it. Okay, then
Flavor.
Taking
Flavor.
reviews from us. Reviews. Asking.
Yes. So you are, so you are looking at it. Maybe the appearance also proves you that it is good. Maybe by tasting it, you have tasted that it is good. The aroma has said that, yeah, it is good. So the flavor, so all this could be the ways that you have assessed that the biryani is good. So if I have to now keep in mind that I'm going to talk about the biryani, now let's take, what are the things involved in making a simple biryani? What are the things involved?
Spices.
Okay, spices,
Rice. Major component.
Rice, mainly
rice,
rice.
yes, major component, rice, yeah. Vegetables, okay, vegetables, paneer, or you keep adding, yes. And
Salt,
then
another major component.
salt, another major component. So all this is there. Fine. Okay. Now I'm going to teach today to make I'm going to teach two things. Okay. One is to ride a bicycle. We all know we may or may not know to ride a bicycle. I don't know very well, but let's learn to ride a bicycle. Okay. Fine. So I'm your teacher. I'm going to teach you to ride a bicycle. Good evening, class. Today we are going to learn riding a bicycle. So, few rules and regulations while learning this skill is riding a bicycle is good because it gives you more energy to its form of exercise. So, it's really nice. But you also have to keep some safety precautions. Remember some safety precautions while riding the bicycle. So, let's begin our class today. Our first lesson on learning to ride a bicycle. Okay, all of you, please hold the bicycle tight. Okay, now take your left leg and put it on one pedal of the bicycle. Take the right leg and put it on the other pedal of the bicycle. Hold the bicycle properly. Balance it. Balance the bicycle. Try and sit on the bicycle and balance yourself. Slowly move the pedal to the bicycle. Keep a watch on the road. Keep doing this. When you continue doing this for a few days, you will definitely master learning the bicycle. Okay, thank you so much. Your class work on learning the bicycle is over. Is that enough to learn a bicycle? To ride a bicycle? Is that enough? No. Why is it not enough? Why?
Practical knowledge.
There was no practical knowledge. So likewise, when we are talking about learning something, it means that you need to have a practical knowledge. You need to use that learning in your life. One. The second example is preparing tea. If I have to tell somebody, okay, come on, go and prepare tea, I tell them take milk, take water, equal quantity, add sugar, add tea leaves, and then boil the milk and boil it, and the tea is ready. Is the tea ready? No. Why?
Theoretical method. Theoretical method.
But why? Why is it not ready?
Supervision is necessary.
Supervision is necessary. What is one more step that is needed for the
Practice.
tea?
Practice.
Okay,
Practice.
Did I give all
Practical
the
method.
Did I give all the information
No.
of the tea?
No, tea powder you
No.
didn't give.
Tea powder, sugar. Then what else did I miss?
Water.
Water.
gas stove.
Gas, या फिर उसके बाद what did I miss?
Boil it.
Measurement.
Strain it. Strain it.
Training. किया ऐसे वो चाय नहीं पी सकता. So sometimes your information that you give also is inadequate to see whether that information or that content can be tested. So these are two things. One is practical is important. One is content which is given halfway. So remember, when you are framing your test, you have to keep in mind few things. One is the weightage, that is importance given to the aspect of your objectives. Now, what were your objectives? I told you knowledge, understanding, application, skill is your objective. So when you are preparing a test, you have to keep in mind these objectives. You have to keep weightage to this. So weightage to knowledge. What are the objectives? Knowledge, understanding, application, skill is the objectives that you have. Now this is a 25 marks test paper, and this 25 marks test paper, I am giving weightage to this part like this. That is, I am giving weightage to knowledge as 24%. That is, I have given 6 marks for knowledge, 10 marks for understanding, 5 marks for application, and 4 marks for skill. Out of my 25 marks paper, I divided my objectives into these many portions. Why did I do this? And I'll explain. First is knowledge. What is knowledge? Knowledge is something that maybe, like I asked you, sun, moon, sun, clouds, rain, river. This was basic. So most of the children in your class should be able to write this part of your paper. That is why knowledge is very important. You cannot just go to understanding. You have to first give, even the child who is not very smart should be able to write some part of the paper. So that is why knowledge is also given an importance, and it is made of 6 marks. Okay, we have given 6 marks in this paper. You can do whatever as per your need, but in this paper I have given 6 marks for this. That is, at least he or she should be able to write little or attempt this fully. The next is understanding. Now, understanding can be in the form of how you will ask more, how you will ask questions based on, maybe the questions can be defined. So, okay, coming back. In knowledge, you can ask questions like fill in the blanks, match the column, choose the right word. It can be pick up the right answer. These could be your knowledge-based questions. So in a knowledge-based questions, you can have MCQs, fill in the blanks, match the column, choose the right word, choose the correct pair. These could be your knowledge-based questions. The second is your understanding. That is, you have understood while you have taught something and they have understood that. Now, how will you check that? Through maybe define, or it could be the question like meaning, give the meaning of, give one word for, give 2 examples, give a short answer. That could be your understanding based questions. Even your, sometimes it could be, a short note could be your understanding based questions. The third is your application based questions. That is, you are going to apply your understanding in your life. So you can ask questions like, if you keep a bowl of water in the sun for a long period of time, what will happen? Why? That is, give reason. What will happen? Compare, differentiate. These are all application based questions. And in the end is skill, wherein you are making the child to do something. Maybe it could be a drawing, or it could be forming a caption or a slogan, or it could be creating something different. So these are your skill, where the child is using his innate talents and trying to show something apart from his knowledge that is gained or understanding a little more higher level. If you see the marks, which section has more marks? Which section has more marks?
Knowledge. Understanding.
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 Understanding has more marks because you have taught that content. Okay? Now you want to check whether it is going to be understood by them. So understanding has more marks. Whereas knowledge also has 6 marks, which means that the child should be able to at least pass by writing that much, or even a little bit of knowledge and understanding, the child should be able to pass the paper. And application is critical thinking. The child will have to think more deeply. So you will come to know what kind of answer a child gives in an application. So you will be able to identify the child. If he requires a higher order thinking, then you can give him more challenging things later. But it means that he will be able to write a better answer, or he has understood it more deeply. So that could be for application, and to skill, to see whether how the child has performed, or how he can draw or create something different. So that's the skill. So remember, this is your weightage of objectives. So these are your objectives, And based on these objectives, your marks should be differentiated or should be given this in this manner. Okay. The next is your weightage of your content. So first is your, I told you, one is your objective. What is your objective to teach? Second is your content that you have to teach. So in my content was in unit is chapter 1 ABC, chapter 2 ABC, chapter 3 ABC would be the content. So from that 3 chapters and 9 subpoints, 3 plus 3 plus 3, 9 subpoints, I have to now pick up the content to prepare my question paper. So what is my content going to be? See, I have written topic 1, topic 2 and topic 3. Now, if you see, topic 1 has more points that can be delivered, that can be asked. So sometimes the topic 1 could be a bigger topic. So I have given 11 marks from that content, from that topic. That is chapter 1 may have many more sub-points or important points that is necessary for the child to learn. So I have given more marks in topic 1. In topic 2, maybe there are not much. So I have given 6 marks from that topic. I am only taking 6 marks of questions from that topic. Whereas in topic 3, I am taking 8 marks. So out of my 25 marks paper, I have distributed it in this form. That is from 11 from unit topic 1, 6 from topic 2 and 8 from topic 3. Now you are the class, you are the teacher, you are the subject teacher. You will come to know which topic is important. And because you come to know which this topic is very important, so accordingly you will emphasize more on teaching of that topic and testing also of that topic. So teaching and testing of a particular topic which is more important has to be focused, and the bifurcation can be like this. I'm just giving you an example. This is an example of the way your content can be distributed for a exam, for a test. Is that clear? Any doubts in first and second? Can I proceed? Yes, can I proceed? Do you need me to get back and clarify this? I'll proceed. Okay. So 2 things that we saw. One was weightage on. What was the weightage? First thing that we did, weightage on
Content. Knowledge. Knowledge.
on objectives. Weightage on objectives. So in objectives, it has knowledge, understanding, application, skill. Okay?
Application skill.
For the first one. Second is weightage on
Content.
Content. So in content, you may have more than one, that is 2 or 3 chapters, and from the 3 chapters, you will decide which is the important chapter and how many marks should be given for that particular chapter. Is that clear? Okay, we move to the third weightage, that is called as weightage on the different forms of questions. Weightage on the different forms of questions. If you remember, when I started, I said that the different forms of questions can be, it can be fill in the blanks, multiple choice questions. So these are all called as objective questions. Objective. They are simple to answer. Objective type questions. Fill in the blanks, multiple choice, match the column. They are all objective type questions. Okay. The next, I told you all that you can ask questions like meaning, definition, short answer. They are all called as short answer type of questions. Short answer type of questions. That is S. Okay. And then you have give reason, application based questions. They are called as essay form of questions. Essay. Essay means they have to write a little bit more. So there are 3 forms of questions. There are 3 types of the forms of questions is that is weightage to be given on the 3 forms of questions. It is always called as ESO, that is essay, short answer, and objective. It looks like this. Now, if you see, I have given 8 marks for an objective type. Why I have given 8 marks? Because it should not happen that the children cannot write anything in the answer. If they get a question paper and they say that I could not write anything, it was sab bouncer gaya, mujhe kuch nahi samjha, अरे बिल्कुल easy नहीं था, then the child may fail. So to give that boost to the child, to give that feeling that yes, I could write something, you should focus on the objective type of question. And where will be the objective type of question? Will it come in the beginning or in the end? Where will the objective type of question?
Beginning.
Why? Very good. Why? Because in the beginning when it comes, it motivates the child to write. If a difficult question comes to us in the first, then we are tensed. We are unable to think further. We feel, nahi, abhi aage nahi hoga mujhse. I will fail. And the child may not write the exam. So remember, you will always try and put the objective type, that is a simpler type. We always remember the maxim, simple to complex, known to unknown. So the simple types, the known type of questions should be in the beginning. That is the objective type of question will come in the beginning. The second, we will give them a little bit more to write, that is the short answer type. That is, you can ask them to write 2 examples, or ask them to give a definition, or tell them to write the meaning, or tell them give in short answers, write in 1 or 2 sentences. These are also short forms of writing an answer, which will help the child to at least form and write something. The third is the essay type, that is a big one. The big answers are kept towards the end, because either first is it may be time taking. Second is everybody may not be able to attempt that question very easily. It will not be easy, so the child will lose interest.
Difficult.
So that is why, it may become difficult, and that is why we keep it towards the end. So the 3 different is your objective type, your short answer type, and your essay type. And if you see the mark distribution, for your objective type I have kept 8, for the short answer I have kept 12, and for the essay I have kept 5. That means that even if the child misses to write the 5 marks, he is not going to lose too much, because he has attempted at least for 20 marks. Okay, so always remember, the child should at least try to get more than 40-50%. So you should keep a check when you prepare the paper. So this is the third way of keeping in mind while preparing the paper. That is weightage on the base of forms of questions. Okay. The fourth type and the last type of question that you have is the weightage. What is this? This is from the beginning that we have been talking about, that we should have questions which are easy, which are average, and which are difficult. Why you should have such questions? Because easy questions, everybody in the class, see, your class consists of different kinds of children. You have different abilities of children. You have different learning styles in your class. And these differences should not make only some to achieve and others not to achieve. So hence, we have to meet our paper to fulfill all the needs of the children. And hence, we should have some questions that are easy, so that it motivates the child to write the paper. It motivates the child to learn further. So your easy type of question is one. Again, your easy can be in the form of objective type. That is multiple choice question, or your fill in the blanks, your match the column, your choose the pair, these are all easy type. Remember, in easy there are also one type, like I can give you an example is fill in the blanks. If you have given fill in the blanks and you have not given the option, so options are not there, so that is you don't have to choose. So fill in the blanks also becomes a little bit not very easy. Why? Because if the child writes a spelling and the spelling is, if the child writes the word photosynthesis, and if the word photosynthesis, the spelling is wrong, then what happens? It becomes, the mark is gone. The child loses mark. So here also you have to remember, when you are framing an easy question, you can help the child in giving a, maybe choose from the pair. So when it is choosing from the pair, the child will just pick up that answer and rewrite the statement. When the child does that, then at least the child gets an opportunity to learn, or gets an opportunity to, that he or she has achieved something. So one is, you also have to think from the point of view of the child when you frame a easy question. The next is your average. So you are trying to cater to the easy and the average student in the class, or the average type of questions. That is your type of questions, or short answer questions. Very little also they will be able to fetch some marks. Like if the child is not able to proper frame proper sentences and write in a very big paragraph, but the child has tried to make an attempt to write something what he or she has understood, then that child comes here and is able to attempt the average based of questions. The last is the difficult. That is your application based questions, wherein the child has to now think of what he learned, he or she has learned, and use that learning in the present situation. So when that happens, that means it is a higher order level of question that you are asking. And a higher order level of questions should not carry too much marks, because if the child does not appear, then he or she loses the marks, loses a lot of marks. So the percentage also is very less. If you see, we have only given 20%, whereas for easy it is 28 and for average it is 52. So most of the students will be able to do the easy and the average, and few children can do the difficult one. And the ones that are able to do the difficult, you have to continuously check those students. If they are consistently, regularly able to solve the difficult, maybe later you can help that child by giving higher order questions. Likewise, if a child is unable to do even the easy ones, then you have to continuously, regularly keep a check and find out why this child is unable to keep up or match, or unable to do these simple things. Then maybe you will have to go back and check what is the problem and help the child to attempt even the easy ones. Okay, so these are the four types of four weightage tables that you have to remember while you are making a question paper. So I'm going back once again with all this. Is first one was spoke about understanding application skill. Then you spoke about the content. When you talked about one and three. This paper has only 3 topics. Maybe you have topics in your content. Okay. Then it is okay. That's essay, short answer, and I've explained how your question will be framed for each of them. And the fourth one is to the difficulty level, that is easy, average, or the difficult. Okay, these are the 4 weightage tables that you have to keep in mind when you frame a question paper. Now, once you have framed this, then comes your final, that is called as the blueprint. Now, based on all this is your blueprint. You prepare a blueprint. A blueprint will give you an idea of how many questions have you asked in easy, in essay, short answer objectives, how many questions you asked in topic 1, in topic 2, and in topic 3, and how many questions are going to be for skill and knowledge and understanding. So all the 4 tables that I showed you, we have put it together into one, which is called as blueprint. So before preparing this, we have to prepare all the 4 tables, because after you prepare the 4 tables, only then you can put the points here in this table. And this is the very important aspect. This is the basis of your question paper. Tomorrow, anybody can come and ask you, show me your blueprint of your question paper. It may be a 25 marks paper, 50 marks paper, or a 100 marks paper. If they ask you, show me the blueprint of your paper, then this is something that you have to keep it ready. Why? I'll tell you why. Sometimes when we make a question paper for the whole syllabus, suppose if you are making a question paper which has 16 chapters, now I have to understand in the 16 chapters of a 100 marks paper, chapter number 1, how many marks did I ask? Chapter number 2, how many marks did I ask? 3, 4, like that for all my chapters, how many marks did I ask questions on? Sometimes what happens is, if we don't prepare this, it may happen from one chapter, we may ask many questions because we feel that is very important. Whereas from other chapter, we may not ask anything. It may also happen from one chapter, I ask all objectives, and from the other chapter, I may ask only difficult questions. So to have a proper understanding, it is important that you make it like this. When you make it like this, you are able to, you are also convinced that you are not gone wrong anywhere. So this helps you in planning the paper. I do understand as teachers, we really find it difficult at times to always make all the weightage tables and blueprint. But I think that when you are making this, your paper becomes more authentic, more concrete, and more valid. You are also having a justification for your question paper, which is very important for us. We should not be caught unaware, or that, oh, you didn't frame a proper question paper. For that, it is important that you keep in mind this while you are making a question paper. Am I clear? Because I'm going to our next topic. So am I clear with the weightage tables and the blueprint?
Yes, ma'am.
Should I go back to any of them? I do understand we are in a very heavy topic, but do you want me to go back to any of them? Yes means proceed. Okay. Yes means proceed, and no means I don't want. Okay. Now, on the basis of that, I will now show you a question paper. Okay. We all have made question papers. I will show you a question paper that is made based on all these tables that we have used. Now, there comes my question paper. So I will go from the beginning of the question paper. So you will write the name of your school. You will write unit test. My subject is science. Standard is 6. Date, I don't know when I'm going to have the exam, but there will be a date which I will fill. Marks is 25, and time I have given is 45 minutes. Then is my instructions that I have given in my question paper. Now, instructions is, I have written, complete your paper. I have told the children to complete their paper. The second instructions I have given is, marks are indicated besides the paper against the question. So there is marks which is given like this. This is the mark that is given besides the question. That is, the question is fill in the blanks, and I have given the marks. So my question paper should give some instructions. Why? Because instructions are important to see what you really want in your paper. Sometimes in some questions there are options. Sometimes in some questions there are many things that you want to inform. So personally, you can't go to all the classes and keep telling. So for that, you have to have some instructions that can be given in a paper. Now this question paper looks like this. So the first part is the fill in the blanks that I have asked. Now I have not written all the questions, but my first question is fill in the blanks, which is of 4 marks. So I will ask them 4 fill in the blanks and ask them to write the answer. Okay. The next is my match the column. So in match the column, I have given A and B. I will give them responses and they will match and rewrite, not drawing lines only. I will tell them to match and rewrite. The third is my name the following. I have asked them to name the following and I have given 2 questions and 2 names they have to give it. They have to give, so it is 4 marks. The next question is define. I have given them 2 definitions. I will ask them and 2 marks each, so 4 marks. The third one is give reasons for the following. Now here, if you see, I have given them an option. You have to write any 2. I am giving them 3, out of which I want them to write any 2. So they can choose from here. So here I can ask them to write, I can give question 1, give reason from 1 unit. Suppose there are 1, give reason from 1 chapter. Suppose there are 3 chapters. So from topic 1 I can give 1, topic 2 I can give 1, and topic 3 I can give 1. And we can see which topic most of the children are attempting and which topic most of the children are not attempting. That is also a way to understand whether that topic is very clear to them. If they are not attending, maybe that lesson or that topic is not very clear with the students. Hence, we will have to look into that as well. Then I have asked the next question is answer briefly. In answer briefly also, I have told them to write any one answer I have told them. So again, I have given them 2. It is on them to choose which one they want to write. And for that, I have given them 3 marks. So 1 answer if they write, they get 3 marks. And the last one is draw. Draw, again here I have asked them to draw any one. I have given them 2 options and I will ask them to draw any one which is of 2 marks. So if you see, my 25 marks paper is distributed in this form, which helps me to keep an account of my blueprint that I have made, of all my tables that I have kept a check on. Okay, so when I see my question paper, it will match to my blueprint. So if you see, going back to all the topics, this and this will match. And that's how you check whether your blueprint and your question paper matches. Is that clear? Okay. So once you prepare your question paper, your task does not get over. Now what you have to do is, you have to now start looking into the paper, reviewing the paper, analyzing the paper. So now what you're doing is, you're going to look back to the paper. Your paper, you are going to put it to the class. They are going to attempt. You are going to get marks. You will come to know whether the children have been able to write well, not write well. If they are not able to write well, then you will come to know why they have not been able to write well. So all those things you will come to know your learning, whether your learning outcomes is achieved. Okay. Now, few things that you have to remember while you are making the question paper. One, like that day when I told you, always remember your questions should be very specific. Don't ask ambiguous questions because the children will not be able to write. First. Second, even when you are writing when you are framing a fill in the blank, avoid starting the blank first, then the other part of the statement. Avoid the blank first. Try and make that the blank comes in between. It should not be dash is the capital of India. It can be capital of India is dash. So don't keep the dash part, that is the blank part first. Avoid it because then it makes, it's a kind of a psychological block that creates at times. Okay. Then is avoid having the same question in the top, in the fill in the blanks, and again in some other part. Bring in a lot of questions you can use. Okay. The fourth is look into the time aspect. Okay. Remember, you are going to because if you are going to ask answers very, very Your short answer should be define, with the meaning, answer in 2 or 3 sentences. If I ask a question like explain the process of a water cycle as a short answer and give it for 1 mark, which means that the child has to write so much only for 1 mark, which is not again going to be suitable. So you have to see what exactly can be fitted into a short answer, what can be fitted to an essay type of an answer. Okay, then then is your, yeah, so also keep time as an aspect. So when you are preparing your question paper, you should see that how much time it takes to write a fill in the blank. See, when we say 25 marks, 45 minutes, we are seeing that in 30 minutes or 35 minutes, the child is going to attempt that 25 marks paper, and 5 or 10 minutes is for review of the answer paper. So that has to be kept in mind when you are framing the marks and the time for the paper. Okay. Now, when you are preparing a question paper, you also need to remember that you can prepare a question bank. What is a question bank? A question bank is a list of questions that you have already prepared for a chapter according to the various forms of questions. What are the various forms of questions? I told you 3 forms of questions. What are they? 3 forms of questions. Objective,
Short answer.
Short
very good.
and essay.
Forms of,
And
yes. So the 3 forms of question are objective, short answer, and
Essay.
so you are going to make a question bank of all this. So from point 1, you are going to make a list of objective questions. After that, you are going to make a list of short answer questions. After that, you are making a list of essay questions. Like that, for all your chapters, you will make this question bank and keep it ready. So while making the question paper, you can pick it up from here and add it in your question paper. Your question bank is your biggest treasure that you have. And remember, question bank should always be reviewed. You should keep changing also. नहीं तो वही same question paper सालों सालों तक बनता रहेगा. So you keep modifying your question bank also. Okay. The next thing that you will also remember is, subjective instructions on the paper, mark, standard, and time. Yes. So now once your question paper is ready, now you have to correct the paper. Correct? You have to now correct. So now while correcting the paper, 2 things that you have to keep in mind is your marking scheme and scoring key. Now, what is a marking scheme and what is a scoring key? So if I told you that, okay, the fill in the blank, the spelling is wrong, so how much marks you will give? Or if match the column, the child has written but has not rewritten it, has only drawn lines, how will you come to know how much marks you need to give? What is the how much what you will deduct, what you will give, what you will not give? Is these 2 things will help you out. That is a marking scheme and scoring key. Now, what is a scoring key? A scoring key is a indication of your objective type of questions. Like fill in the blank is an objective type of questions. So in a scoring key, they will let you know if the spelling is correct. If the spelling is wrong, then deduct half mark. It is an instruction given by the person who prepares the paper for assessing the paper. That is, it will be given that if there is any mistake in the answer, how much marks to be deducted. If the answer is correct, how much marks is to be given. I'll give you an example of one question that we have. Fill in the blank. It is 4 marks. Okay? And my first question says dash and dash. Okay? The second question says, then there is a dash. The third question says, dash and dash. So now tell me, how many dashes are there in this fill in the blanks? How many dashes are there?
5.
आणि काही अडचण आली ना ऑफिसला
Five. 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 dashes. But what is the marks that is asked given? 4.
4.
Can I give half mark or 1 mark for everything? If I give 1 mark, it means 1 mark is going to be less. It means that the question that I have framed is wrong. So here I will have to maybe remove one question. Now is it correct if I do this? Dash and dash, dash and dash. Is it correct? Is 1 mark given to each question? Correct.
Yes.
Now I will give them an instruction. If the spelling, so I will give instruction is 1 mark to be given for correct answer. So if this answer is correct, I will give 1 mark. If this answer is correct, I will give 1 mark. If this is correct, 1 mark. This is correct, 1 mark. So it means 4 marks to be given if answers are correct. The second instruction I will give, marks to be deducted, half mark to be deducted if the spelling is wrong. So this may be a correct answer. Photosynthesis may be a correct answer, but the spelling is wrong. So I will deduct, instead of 1 mark, now I will give only half mark. So this instruction, which is given by the paper setter to be followed, is called as scoring key. What is now scoring key? Remember, is always for objective type of question. The second is marking scheme. Marking scheme is for big answers or essay or short answer type of questions. In that, so marking scheme is called as the instructions given for a short answer or essay questions. So the instruction can be, if 4 points, suppose if the question wants 4 points to be given. So 4 points if it is written, then give 2 marks. If only 2 points given, then give 1 mark. If the points are not clear, then give 0 marks. So whatever instruction that a teacher gives for an answer, which is short answer or essay, is called as marking scheme. That is, we all have a marking scheme. We all, well, while we are correcting papers, they give us इतना marks देना है अगर ये answer correct है, ये marks deduct करना है कि अगर ये answer में कुछ गलत है. So when you are doing that, that is called as marking scheme. And scoring key instructions are for objective type of questions. Okay. So once that is done, then we come to the last part of the answer. That is, you're going to do your review of the paper, review of the marks. You will see how many students have scored what marks, and based on the marks that you get, you will be able to identify whether your learning outcomes are achieved or whether your learning outcomes have not been achieved. If it is not achieved, then you will have to go back and see which chapter the children are finding it difficult to attempt. Which chapter the children are not able to attempt the correct answer. Which chapter the children are very, very comfortable, it is very easy. That will give you the whole understanding of the question paper. So remember, when you are framing the question paper, it takes you into 3 parts. One is your planning of the paper, which is based on all your weightage tables and your blueprint. Second is you're editing your paper. You're trying to see whether it matches the objectives, the content, the marks, the type of questions. Then you are reviewing your question paper. You're seeing whether you have done justice to all the topics properly. And then you are going and finding out whether this test that you have done has been successful in achieving your learning outcomes. Okay, so this is your entire evaluation planning. Okay, any questions that you have? Because I'm kind of done. If you have any questions, I can answer that. Any questions? Anything that you want me to share or show once again? I'll just write, yeah. Because we are just on time, we are like at 5:55. So if there is anything that you need me to explain, we can go back and get into it. Yeah. Any questions about your question paper framing or your any of the weightage tables, your year plan, unit plan? So slowly now we all have our subjects in hand, and we'll be preparing our unit plan and year plan and unit plan. Though we know that our times ahead is quite a little bit uncertain, but surely we have to finish what we have in hand. So how you're going to plan it will be surely looked into. So your year plan will be the first step that you take up, then your unit plan, and then you go on with preparing your tables. So right now when you are there, you can prepare a question bank and keep, which will help you to ease your question paper work. So if you go back and start preparing your question bank, then you will be able to understand which chapter is more important, how many questions to take, what forms of question to take. That will help you to, easier, it will be easier to move on. Yeah, once you will plan and do it, only then. So it requires something that you really need to go back and do it, only then you will be able to, is it needed to add essay type of questions in the lower? So in the lower classes, when you are doing your essay type are those questions which require them to frame 2 or 3 sentences. So in your, even there you have the essay type or the difficult form. You remember I told you about difficult form of questions is your essay type. So when you ask a student to write 2, 3 or 4 sentences, that could be your essay type. It may not be termed as a essay in our language for a higher class, but essay probably it means that you are able to answer in 2 or 3 or 4 sentences a content. Some of the children cannot frame sentences in a very proper or systematic manner or sequential manner. If a child is able to present the answer even in the lower class in a very sequential manner and systematically, that can be considered as an essay type of question. Yes. Yeah. Any other questions? So we do have essay type questions in our class 1, 2, and 3 also. It is there where children have to learn and write the answer. It's mostly done through a MUGUF, rote memorization. But that if that is not there, and if the child can write in his or her own words and explain, then it really works well.